I'm glad you're here. You are eavesdropping on my conversations with everyday adults about coping with the tough stuff and how they got from bad to better. I'm Brandy Menefee, and these are coping stories. My 62-year-old friend Gavin knew he had limited time due to his terminal illness, and he told me he had a personal story he wanted to share. A story that could live on forever and possibly offer listeners and viewers some comfort and hope when they needed it most. So I set up 2 cameras and started the conversation. I had no idea what Gavin was going to share. He was always such a private guy, and his request to record seemed out of character. I didn't even really ask any questions. I didn't have to, because the story just poured out of him. So what you're about to hear, or what you're about to watch if you're on YouTube or Spotify, is Gavin candidly sharing his personal story about a guy completely lost, getting through life, who suddenly had the most dramatic experience that profoundly shifted his life and ultimately helped Gavin face death with peace and faith. This story is for anyone having a challenging day, week, month, year, or life chapter, and especially if you're dealing with crippling anxiety, addiction, grief, hopelessness. Gavin recorded this story for you.
I was fully alcoholic by the time I was 15 years old. And I was smoking pot and trying to get anything in my system from the time I was 10 years old. So I was trying to escape my reality by any means possible. I was just uncomfortable in my own skin the same way I am today in a certain regard, is that I operate out of a place of extreme anxiety, uncertainty. The world really doesn't make sense to me in a lot of ways. And I just have always had a hard time navigating things like school, relationships, human beings, and the basic things that we're surrounded by all day long. I just have a really hard time navigating that stuff and understanding like how it works, and my processor is just off. So I had all that going on. I'm sure if I had been tested at an early age, it would have been Asperger's or some form of autism or something like that. But nobody was testing me. They were just like just pass him through grades. And so I was in high school. I was the stoner guy who just got everybody pot and got everybody high and was the center. I just found my way into the center because, again, being painfully uncomfortable and finding ways to adapt. It was, I can get you alcohol, I can get you drugs, I can do all this stuff. And that became my thing. So my yearbook is full of, you're the biggest stoner in the world. My teachers were like, hey, hope you make it through this thing. I had a teacher, Mr. Swanson, tell me, Gavin, you're a good-looking guy. I hope you go into acting because it's your only way you're going to make it in life. He said that as I walked in 15 minutes late, stoned out of my mind in 7th grade or something like that. So, I just knew this was kind of an issue, but it was just like I needed to do it. It's what I needed to do to survive. Like drugs and alcohol saved me. It's like, no, that kills people. No, it saved me from killing myself. And so that set up the trajectory of my life, that for things that I wanted to do were going to be largely influenced by that. And what happened was I developed all kinds of character behaviors and traits and things like that were not positive. Dependence on others, manipulation, things like that. And so, I was always looking for someone to take care of me. I knew I couldn't take care of myself in the world. And so I had things like that going on inside of me, which just brought on like self-loathing and feelings of, oh my God, I'm incompetent in the world. And so to treat that, of course, I knew what to do, is to drink and use more. And so I was in this thing of just addiction and alcoholism. That's not unusual for anybody that's gone through it or in it. Go through it. Once you're in it, you're in it. But that was where I was kind of operating from, and I was able to meet a really great woman who had no idea what marrying or being with an alcoholic was going to be like, and the ride that she was getting herself on. Although she said to me on our second date, after she asked me, "Why do you want to be with me?" She was this very normal, sweet, kind person. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, use anything, like zero. Smoked a little bit of weed once or twice, but that was it. And hated alcohol. She said, "Why do you want to be with me?" And I said, I don't know, you seem very cool. I like you. And inside, I knew why. She was normal. She was sweet. And I felt safe with her. And I felt like this is the type of person that I need to be with. She can help take care of me. I knew that early on without actually admitting that to myself. And so she turned to me after I said that to her. She said, because I was drunk at the time, I said that to her. She said, if something is going to break us apart at some time if we get together, it's going to be your alcohol, drinking. And I thought, wow, what a kind of a profound thought to have. Like, she's way up in the future somewhere. Like, that would happen like 100 years from now. It's not, I've got this under control. So anyway, I'm leading up to this story, but that's kind of like where my life was. We ended up getting married. We ended up buying a house together. We ended up having a son. And, I ended up starting a business, and the business was something that I could do where I could kind of like get loaded while I did it. And I could just kind of, do this with this intense anxiety, uncertainty. But I'm artistic. And it was an artistic expression for me. So it was really therapeutic for me to do this, although incredibly anxiety producing, because I'm a people pleaser and approval seeker. And I was always with my clients, I was like, please like what I do for you, And so that just was like always kind of like a wave inside of me, just like, okay, make them happy. Don't disappoint them, because I disappointed a client once, and she said, you just completely screwed up my yard. And I felt like I just wanted to go kill myself. I had no ability within myself to take that kind of thing on and feel like, okay, people are unhappy at times. They make mistakes. How do I just make this right? I didn't have that skill, that ability at that time. I just went straight into self-loathing and like, how do I self-destruct now? And so I just was able to kind of like be very successful at this landscape contracting garden design business. I got all high-end clients, Holmby Hills, Beverly Hills, Palisades. I just had top-of-the-line clients that just absolutely loved me. And I never felt worthy. I never felt like, I felt like I was high, they're going to find out I'm a fraud at some point. And, I wish I could have just like known what the experience would have been like to just be like, yeah, I'm good at what I do. This is great. This is life, But I didn't have that. So this is where things kind of changed. So when my wife at the time became pregnant with our son, which was quite an effort because she was older. She was, I think, 36 or 37 at the time. We were having trouble. She's like 35, and I'm like 37. And so she ends up getting pregnant, and something clicked inside of me. And I went, I can't handle this. I don't know what to do. And I went down a road of, I just ratcheted everything up to the next level. I started, I don't know, I'm going to say things here that are kind of edgy. Is that all right? So I started looking for things outside of myself to kind of like distract me to new levels. So I started going to strip clubs, and I had a marijuana farm growing in the backyard that my wife was not really aware of because I was a landscape contractor. So I had built a screen, I had a whole garden, And so I had just grown about $50,000 worth of pot backyard, and harvested and manicured it in the whole shot. And I was selling it to the strippers up at the strip club. And really, what happened was there was this immediate thing where I went over to this stripper's house. I took her and her boyfriend some quarter pound of pot, and I said, God, I'm so tired. I'm going back and forth to the hospital. My wife has hyperemesis. She's just, we don't know if this baby's going to make it. I'm staying up for 20 hours a day, and I'm just completely exhausted. And she said, I said, I need some speed or something. And I wasn't a speed guy. And she dumped some crystals out on the table in front of me, like a glass table like this, and she took a credit card. She smashed it, and she goes, do that. And the boyfriend got pissed because he's like, that's mine. And she's like, you're supposed to be off this shit. And so I did a big line of this stuff, and the most magical thing happened that had ever happened in my life was the entire world made sense. Everything within my brain, every feeling of everything, the uncertainty, the things, the not disconnect from people, from everything went away in one snort of this line. And when I say I was on a quest now to pursue this with a passion, I said, what is that stuff? She goes, crystal meth. And I went, oh God, that's for hillbillies and shit like that, but it's magical. And I went, oh my God, how do I get more? Do you have more of that? She goes, no. And I went on a quest. So anyway, it turns out that the guys that ran the parking lot were tied in with the Mexican mafia, and they could get me all the meth I wanted, and I would bring them pot, and we had a transaction thing going. So I grew $50,000 worth of pot, and it did nothing. We ended up kind of buying, with part of the money, kind of buying a nice car with it, but otherwise everything just went straight to the guys in the thing, and then right up my nose. And so, which isn't unusual it's not unusual for drug addicts to do that, it turns out. And so fast forward 7 years of circling the drain. I lived in empty apartments. I lived in a garage for a period of time, and my life was just imploding. The business was gone. The accounts were gone. I'm living a double life. My wife, I would stay at the house once in a while, and it was just, I would just like walk into the house and be there for a half an hour and go, okay, I got to go now. And I'd have some lame excuse. And everybody had kind of given up on trying to figure out what was going on. They kind of like, they knew, but they didn't know. And they didn't know the extreme to what it was all about. And this went on for, like I say, 7 years. And the most important thing that I ever wanted to do, be, or anything else in my life was to be a dad. And so I've got this son that I'm spending time with it, at times. I'm loaded a lot of the time. And I'm absolutely kind of suicidal and devastated that I can't be the thing that I always wanted to be. I would do things like fall asleep on the freeway on purpose, because I'd be up for 10, 15 days in a row. And I would do things like fall asleep on the freeway, as selfish as, like, thinking about this, how selfish that is now. And I'd wake up, like, in the ice plant or whatever. And, just crazy behavior. It turns out crystal meth will make you do really crazy shit, especially if you're up for days or weeks on end. And it got crazy. I got really obsessed with guns, and I carried guns everywhere I went, and it got crazier and crazier. So I showed up because I wanted to go see my son, and I showed up at my house that I was like a stranger at, and one of Bree was my now my wife at the time, and Kathy, a friend of hers and a friend of mine, Kathy met me in the front yard. She was leaving, and she goes, "Oh, Bree's waiting for you inside." And I went, "Oh, okay, like that seems strange. She's waiting for me inside. I'm kind of here to see Ryan." And so I walked in, and she had some paraphernalia she had found, and she said, "What is this?" And I had just been a world-class liar because I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I just know how to lie. I know how to say, "Oh yeah, fuck, this guy gave me that stuff, and I just told him I can't hold that for you. I just could lie my way out of anything. As implausible as everything would be, I had a story that was just very, I could not, my mind went blank. And I was kind of shocked, my mind went blank. And I said, I'm a drug addict and I can't stop. And she looked at me with like the greatest level of relief you can imagine. And she said, thank God you're finally being honest. And I was just like, wow, what just happened? Because I held on to this secret with my life because being loaded was the only thing that had ever saved me. And I was exposing the miracle cure, which had turned into complete utter devastation. You know, it had long since it hadn't worked for me in years. I was just doing it to do it and just maintain some level and all of this stuff. But she said to me, thank God for your being honest with me, finally. And she said, I'm going to do 3 things. And these aren't negotiable. And first, you're dangerous, and I'm going to get a restraining order, so you can't be around Ryan, and you can't come in this house, and I'm going to divorce you. And the third thing is I'll help get you into treatment if you choose that. If you don't, I know you're going to die. It's like 157 pounds at the time, like 6'3", 157 pounds, and I was just like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Like, I couldn't see that she was handing me the greatest gift in the world. I couldn't see that. And I thought, this is devastating. And I went to this garage that I was holding up in time. And I was kind of curled up in the fetal position, crying, just like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? You know, this is, if I don't have this crutch to hold me up, what happens to me? Like, I'm not going to survive. And I always had this inner survival thing, even driving, falling asleep on the freeway and doing crazy things like that, a lot of crazy behavior. I always had this inner desire to survive. I always wanted to live. And that was inside of me. And I thought to myself, I was curled up in this dark garage, I suddenly had this thought that, okay, so everything goes away. So what? It'll be okay. And that was like the first time I had like this little spiritual experience. Looking back on it, I could see that didn't come from me. All I knew was terror, panic, and get loaded. Terror, panic, get loaded. And I suddenly realized that I went, wow, that's weird. I'm so calm. And I just kind of made this decision right there. I'm going to do whatever Bree said to do. I was doing about an 1/8 of an ounce of crystal meth a day, smoking it. And I was taking maybe between 5 and 15 Klonopin a day. I would go to Mexico and get jars of drugs. And I was taking somas and different pills and just Xanax. And I was a garbage can of just like drugs going in all day long. And I knew that the detox was going to be insane. And so I went over to talk to Bree. She looked into some rehabs and she found a place. And so she said, well, we can go look at this. And they said they'll detox you there. And I said, no. Like, I didn't want to commit to anything. I was trying to find a way out after I had said yes. And I said, no, I want to detox on my own. So I went back to the garage and I detoxed for 3 days. And I was out of my mind. Like, it was really insane detox. And when I came out of the garage, I was just like, I could barely walk. I was disoriented. I thought things were happening around me that weren't. And I went and got together with Bree. She drove me out to Pasadena to this recovery center. And I just saw these guys with tattoos. It turns out it was a Music Cares, the place where Music Cares sends drug addicts and alcoholics. So I walk in, it's just guys with tattoos that are like, yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrifying. And I'm like looking at Bree like, take me out of here, please. Take me to Betty Ford where it's safe. And Bree was like, can you just try this? And I just like had this moment of clarity once again that I just don't know where it came from, that said, you've just fucked this woman's life up so much, just give her a break and say yes. And I went, so I said, okay. And the guy had the paperwork in front of me to sign myself in, and I was just looking at it, and he goes, you're having trouble signing that paper, aren't you? I go, yeah, I really am. And he goes, I had trouble signing that paper like 10 years ago myself. And he was the director's son who had got clean and sober. And so when he said that to me, I went, I can sign myself in. People have done this before. Because this whole recovery thing, getting loaded was completely normal to me. Recovery was completely alien. I had no idea. As a matter of fact, Bree told me they have a cordon bleu trained chef, and they have yoga. And so I thought recovery was about eating cordon really good food and doing yoga all day. And I was like, I'm going to put on a lot of weight, which I did, but I just was like, okay, this is really interesting how recovery works. And so they searched all my clothes. They put me in a room with this guy who was like really scary to me because he was in there for violence. And it was room number 34, I believe. This is important for a reason. But they put me in with this guy. He was like kind of nuts. He liked to sit up on the roof all night and look at stuff. And he had been in fights and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. And I'm just like, so anyway, I'm there. Some guys come up to me. They go, well, hey, what's your thing? I go, oh my God, these guys are spies for this place. They're trying to get information from me. They're going to use it against me. It turns out they were just sober guys trying to help out a newcomer. And I just didn't know anything I didn't know why people would come up and kindly ask, what's your thing? Especially guys with neck tattoos and like scars, and go like, hey man, what's your thing? And it's like they were just being good, sober guys, Anyway, I slept for a day, and I slept for a day, and I was trying to land back in my body and trying to figure out what this is all about. And somebody came in and they said, listen, we give you a day to kind of sleep, but here you got to start joining groups. You got to come out and do the groups. And so I go, groups? Oh my God, what is this? No one told me about the groups. And so I go in and I sit down, and I'm really vibrating, like, whoa, and everything's like, whoosh. And I walk in, and a guy comes walking in, Mike W., who was a guy in Cocaine Anonymous, like 14 years at the time. He ran the little canteen where you'd go buy snacks and stuff. He ran that. They gave him a little room there, and he did this as a side hustle. And good guy, just I connected with him. I could feel something really good about him. And I didn't understand people in recovery, but I understand some of these people seem really cool, like really safe. And I was looking for safe people. And so Mike came in, he came in with a stack of books. And I went, oh, he's got books. We're going to be doing, it's like study? What is this? And he goes, okay, people, I got your books here. Come on, everybody get a book. Who doesn't have a book? And I went, I don't have a book. And he comes up, and it's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I go, oh my God, this is about AA? Oh my God, no. I've been to AA meetings on court cards from getting DUIs, and I always sat through the meeting, made eye contact with the guy over there, and we'd go to Ghost Town, score some crack, and hit the 7-Eleven and get some alcohol and go. And I go, AA doesn't work. I've been there. I've tried AA. I hadn't tried anything. I had no open mind, no nothing. I just went to the meeting so I could find the guy to get loaded with, And and I asked a guy one time after the meeting, I said, I think I need to get sober, I think. And he looked at me, goes, I said some other things to him. I think I'm ready to cut back. And he goes, hey man, listen, I'm sorry, but you're not even close to being ready. I can tell you right now. He goes, but keep coming back to the meetings. And I was so offended. I thought, this asshole, screw you. So now here comes a guy in with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous stack. And he, hands me a big book, and I'm Brandy, when I tell you I'm crushed. I'm like, this is not going to save me. And now the reality hits me that I'm going to sit there, and they're going to read this book to me for the next 30 days while I eat cordon bleu prepared food, doing yoga part-time, and they're going to send me out the door, and I'm going to immediately go out and have to get loaded again because it's the only thing I know how to do. And I'm crushed. And he hands out some flyers, some paperwork, and I'm looking up at the wall, and the 12 steps are up on the wall, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And And I'm glancing up at them, and I'm looking, and I see like I go, oh my God, wait a minute. And I look up and I see the third step, and I go, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And I went, oh my, wait a minute. Alcoholics Anonymous is about God? I've never been to church. What I'm telling you here is the reality. I've never been to church. I'd never been to, I'd never done anything spiritual in my life. When I would ask my mom about, Mom, what are we? And she'd go, I think we're Protestants or something like that, maybe. And I'd go, okay, so what do we do with that? She'd go, I don't know. I don't know what we do with it. There was just this whole blank spot on anything spiritual or religious of any kind. So I had and I always had this inner feeling like that was something, I wish I knew more about that. Like that could be important to me. But he hands out these flyers. I'm looking up. I put my hands like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And Mike says to me, Gav, there's about 60 of us in the room, maybe 70 people in the room sitting at round tables. And everybody's just kind of haggard and like, a lot of new people, a lot of people just like, meeting. And it wasn't like, yay, we're in a meeting. And Mike says something to the effect, I want to be completely honest during this thing. So there's some things that I don't remember the exact thing, but something to the effect of, Gav, what's the matter? What's going on with you? And I go, well, Mike, I'm going to tell you the truth. You guys get this thing, this sobriety thing, and I don't. I'm fucked. Because I've never had a God, I'm looking up at the thing here, I've never had a God in my life. I've never had anything in my life that would help me understand that I have to turn my will and my life for the care of some God. And so I'm screwed. And you guys get this and I don't. And he said, one of the most incredible things to me. He started laughing, not out loud, but he just like was snickering. And he said, oh yeah, maybe you just accept that there's a power that wants to give you guidance and direction in your life. And it's that simple. And I went, every thought I had ever had about a guy in a robe sitting up in the clouds judging me and like, and Gav's not important. He's just a loser, you know? Every one of those thoughts just went away. And I thought, guidance and direction in my life, that's what I've been looking for my entire life. And I looked down at the paperwork that he had set in front of me. And the paper was glowing. And when I say the paper was glowing, I mean the paper was light. And in a fraction of a second, I went, oh my God, there's a God. Like that quick, I went, there's actually a God. What I've wondered about my entire life, it's real. I just could not believe it. And I looked up from the paper in complete amazement. And I looked at the people's faces around me, and everybody's faces were glowing. And they were alive. And I could see the joy and the hope inside of them. They were like living spirits in front of me, everyone around the entire room. And I looked out the window across the way, and the trees were glowing in lights, different colors of lights. It was just absolutely spectacular. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was completely awestruck. It was just the most dramatic experience, and it was just the first of a small experience compared to what was coming. I didn't know what to do with this. I did not know what to do with this. And when we were walking out of the room, a guy, Peter, who was just out of county jail, who I had kind of like connected with, he seemed like a cool guy, safe, liked to work out all day long doing push-ups, you know. And Peter turned as we were walking out of the room, and he goes, and this is real, what I'm telling you here. He turns and he goes, look at Gav. Look at Gav. Look at his face. Something happened to him. And people looked and they went like, wow. Like, wow. And I went, what does this mean? What can they see that I can't see? And Peter could see that I had had a spiritual experience. I can't explain how. I can't tell you what went on in my face, eyes, or anything else. So I am wondering, why did this just happen? And my thought is, this happens to everybody who comes here and everybody who gets sober. This is just part of the experience. So I went and actually talked to a guy who was in there. He was a MusiCares guy who was an incredible musician. And I was sitting in his room and I said, "Hey, did it happen to you? Did you have, like, did it happen to you?" And he goes, "What do you mean it happened to me?" I go, "Something happened to you when you came here." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I had the heat's off. I come here, I'm serious about recovery." But I'm going, he's not saying, but he's saying something happened, so he probably just doesn't want to talk about it. So I go back, the day goes on, and I'm just completely, don't know what to do with this, but I go back into my room, and the guy who was there with me, I'm not going to say his name, but the guy who was in there with me was not in there. It was nighttime. There was a medication station outside of my room. And the doctor who ran the place had put in an order for me for non-narcotic sleep medication. And I was kind of contemplating, because I was going like, wait, I don't want to put anything in my system, and I've never had that feeling before. Like, I don't want to do anything that's going to take me back in that direction, because maybe something's happening here and there's hope for me somehow. I'm going to set this up for you. I'm in the dark room, sitting on a bed. And this is the place that ended up turning into, Dr. Drew's Celebrity Rehab, but it's vinyl mattresses at the time. It's far from being Celebrity Rehab. It's vinyl mattresses so people could kick and do whatever they needed to do on the mattresses and whatever. And just, vinyl mattresses, vinyl mattress, two beds in the room. It's a former nursing home that they had turned into this thing with a bathroom in between. And I'm sitting in this dark room, and the light is on in the hallway. Okay, so if you can imagine, there's a door that's 90%, 95% shut, but not clicked shut, so there's a light going around the edge of and I am sitting trying to figure out what happened to me. I am just going, like, I'm completely just like in awe, and I am trying to figure out, what did this experience mean today? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like I say, I have no idea what I'm still doing there. I'm just like, does this lead to the next thing I do? What happens? And as I'm sitting there, I'm contemplating this, and I glance over at the door, and I'm thinking, I think to myself real quickly, do I want to take the sleep meds? Because I could hear all the people outside in the hallway go to get their meds. They're lining up, hey, meds. And I'm sitting there, and I go, God, what do I want to do? What the hell does this mean? I look with a glance over, and the light's a little brighter, and I go, that's weird. Like, what just happened? Like, are they turning the lights on out there? Are they increasing the lights? And I look over, and the light gets brighter around the door, and then I realize something's happening. I just suddenly realized that something is happening that is completely unexplainable to me. And the light goes from white to blue-white, and it gets more and more intense. And the entire area where the door is completely the most amazing blue-white light you can imagine. And I realize that I'm in the presence of spirit. And I'm sitting like this on the bed, and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God. And I'm going back like this, and I go to put my elbow back, and I can't move. I'm being held in place, completely like in this position like this. And I go like, oh my God. And so the thought is, either I'm dying, and this is the light that I've heard about, or something's happening and I don't understand it, but this is the most amazing, beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And the light got greater and greater and greater until the entire room was lit up with light. And then the next thing I know, I'm no longer in my body. I am in this light, fused in this light. I think that I just died. And I'm like, this is absolutely okay. This is the most amazing place. The feeling of awe, I looked it up after years later, months later, years later, I looked it up, and awe is like this feeling of unexplainable amazement that's connected with something that's like bigger than this world, this life, spirit. And I was sitting there having this experience, and I was now not sitting there. Now I was in this light, and I said I didn't know what to do. And so I had this thought, can I ask you 3 questions? And this is like the only thing I could come up with in my mind. And it was like the genie thing, like you ask some questions of the genie, And I asked, can I ask you 3 questions? And it was like, of course you can ask 3 questions. And nothing was a voice, everything came to me through my mind. And I said, I've got some things I always wondered about. I've feared evil my whole life. Did I need to fear evil? And this representative thing started to come to me. And there was this great big, beautiful light, blue light, this light was represented in my mind's eye. And it was this big, beautiful ball, and then there was this little ball next to it of like red and black and kind of like seething smoke, and it went, and it was a representation I could understand, and it said, "This is me, this is evil, and this has no power over this," and that's what you need to know. And then I said, "Okay, can I ask you, is there a heaven?" And the voice said, "Of course, there's absolutely a heaven." And I said, and all of a sudden, a representation, and this is the best thing I've been able to find, is this is what came to mind. And again, it was a representation that I could understand, and it was beautiful, like emerald green, Ireland, Scotland, just absolutely beautiful. And I could feel what the beauty of that felt like inside of me. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And I said, okay, my 3rd question is, who are you? And the best representation I've been able to find is this was what came to my mind. It was a lady holding a baby in a mosaic. I had art history classes, but I'd never seen this image before. And it was this beautiful image of a woman holding a baby. And I went, maybe that's just representative of whatever it is, something in the spirit world but it was, that it was God. It was this whole thing was whether it was the Holy Spirit, an angel, God, I don't know. I can't tell you to this day. I had this thought immediately after. And the thought was, what an incredible life I could have lived if I had had this information. And I had this feeling of just kind of like, I just wish I would have known this. I wish this could have been revealed to me. And in an instant, I was aware of my body, and the way that I was aware of it, and this is kind of gross, but I had been sobbing during this experience. I had been sobbing uncontrollably and wasn't aware of this because I wasn't in my body. And I was suddenly aware that my face was covered in moisture, and my entire shirt up here was covered in moisture from my sobbing, and snot had been coming from my nose. It's gross, but I'm just telling you the way it went down. I just want the whole story, I just was suddenly aware of that quick. And in that instant of being aware of that, I was like, I didn't die. I'm still here. Oh my God. And as that thought came to me, the light started to move very slowly across the room, the way it came in, And I was suddenly, as it moved across, I was suddenly let go of, and I dropped back on the bed. And the light went and went and went, and the same way it went around the door frame, and the door frame came back into light, and that was like, that's the way the experience ended. I just don't believe that this power has an ego and is like, you've got to do this or that to get in my good graces. I did nothing to get in this power's good graces. I did everything the opposite of being a good person, and the power showed up for me and transformed my thinking and my behavior and my world and my life. You know, I'm telling you a story of an experience of what I saw, but when I tell you about an experience that changed me 180 degrees from anything I had ever experienced in my life, I suddenly, every thought I had about life, every thought I had ever had about people was rearranged 180 degrees in a dramatic way. And I was aware that I was part of the human race, and I was just as much a human being as anyone else, and that everybody has their stuff in life, and that I was part of that. And all of these beautiful, beautiful people that were locked up in this facility with me were just like me. They just probably wanted to have a life, but this is where they had been led to. And so I went to sleep that night, and I slept like a baby. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things. One is, I woke up the next morning, and I had kicked drugs many, many times, and it was usually 10 to 14 days of living hell. And I woke up the next morning after taking all of these drugs for all this time, and I'm about 5 days into detox now, and I woke up with not one bit of detox the next morning. I woke up as fresh and clean as if I had never used a drug in my life. I just woke up and I had an appetite, and I was clear-headed, and I just was like, and I walked out, and I'm going to tell you some, a couple crazy things here. I just had this feeling that I just needed to make contact with every single person I met. And every bit of prejudice I ever had, and the people that look differently, and that there's people that look differently than me here that were kind of making me nervous and scared before, I saw everybody's a child of God. Every single person is a child of God. And we're all equal. And I walked out, and I started shaking people's hands, just holding their hand. And that turned into the next 28 or whatever days. I just would go through and just grab people's hands, and I would just shake their hand. I would look them in the eye, and I would tell people I love them. And something crazy happened is everybody, for the most part that I was making contact with, was doing that, started doing that back to me and back to other people. And it was this crazy experience. I was just like, wow. And one guy came up to me and he said, I've been trying to figure you out. I finally figured it out. You're a hippie. You're one of these peace-loving, groovy guys, and that's what it is about you. And I went, I've just been an anti-hippie my whole life. I'm just like, no, man, I'm like a fuck the world guy, I want to tell you this. The next day, after this experience happened, I was never able to open my mouth in front of a group of people and feel comfortable. I had anxiety. I screwed up my brother's wedding because I had to make the toast, and I had a nervous breakdown, and I said something really stupid and really ridiculous, and self-loathing, and oh my God, I overshot the mark on the drugs and the alcohol, and it didn't take away the anxiety. And so this paralyzing self-centered fear was always on me. I dropped out of school. Being unable to speak in front of a group of people was another thing that guided the direction of my life. I had to take a communications class at SMC and I thought, I can't do it. I can't do a speech in front of a group of people, so I dropped out. And I always dropped out, always ran away. If there was a Thanksgiving dinner and you had to go around the table with people that I knew, loved, and cared about, it would go around the table and do that. I would not show up for that meal. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was incapable. The anxiety I'd feel like I'm going to pass out. Next morning when I woke up after this experience, I walked down into the multi-purpose room where that first experience had happened. And so the guy, when I walked in, the guy said, "Hey, you want to lead the meeting today?" And I went, "Yeah, I'd love to." And he handed me the sheet, and there were 30, 40 people in there. And I had no perceptible anxiety inside my body. And I sat there and I led the meeting, and the whole shot sat up there in front of the group, read all the stuff, did the whole thing. And I thought, this is the most incredible thing that's ever going to happen in my life. You know, I did all the step work in there. I did everything that they said for me to do. And I had a lot of incredible experiences in there. I started to see things that were, you know, connected with that spiritual experience, smaller versions of it, where I would be sitting in the shower and the water would be going down and a message would come to me. See, there's a cause and effect. The water comes out there, it cleanses your body, it does that, it goes down the drain, and then that goes out, and it's purified again, it goes in the ocean, and then it comes out. And there's a cause and effect, there's a cycle to everything. Everything there's a cycle to. Things that seem random and completely out of place, there's cause and effect, and there's purpose to things that happen that you don't need to understand. But that's always happening around you. And I went, okay. It was like this entity was now with me. And I had these different experiences. I met some incredible people. Some people said some really meaningful things to me that set me on my path. And so when I was getting ready to leave the place, you had to do an exit thing where you had to read you had to do a third step, which is turning your will over to the care of God, and you had to explain what that meant to you. And so I read the third step in front of this group once again, which was something I'm incapable of doing. I read it to the group of people, and someone said to me, you know, Gav had an experience here, we all know that. And so, you know, he's gonna be fine. And Lori, my counselor, said, she goes, I've seen lots of people have experiences here. And I've seen guys come in that were shooting dope into their carotid artery because all their arteries had collapsed after having those spiritual experiences. And she said, I can tell you right now, faith without works is dead. You can have experiences, but if you don't connect something with those experiences, chances are it won't last. And that was really powerful to me. So I knew I had to go out and do the same thing every other drug addict and alcoholic was going to go into recovery that followed a 12-step path had to do. And I realized it right there. My wife at the time, Bree, my son had come to visit me, but my parents had come to visit me a couple times. And Bree was incredibly agnostic. She's Jewish, but she just didn't want anything to do with God or anything like that. And we were in the car coming back. You know, I was in the back seat. Ryan was back there with me in his car seat. And Bree said, we're going to the dinosaur farm because Ryan wants to. It was a place where they had stuffed animals, you know, and he loved stuffed animals. They had stuffed dinosaurs. And so she said, we're going to go there, and Ryan wants to get some stuff. I said, great, let's go. You know, it's incredible. I'm out, you know. Ryan turned to me and he said, so what did you do in there? What was that about? He was 6. He said, what were you doing in there? What happened to you in there? And I said, well, I can tell you this. God came and visited me in there. And his face lit up. Bree, I looked in the rearview mirror and Bree was glaring at me. And Ryan said, what happened? I said, well, I'll tell you the whole story later, but God appeared before me in there and told me some things and showed me some things. And he showed me that life can be so much different than I thought it could be. And it turned out that years later, when I asked Ryan something to the effect of, you know, where he got his spiritual connection from, because he followed a spiritual path himself. He still is on a spiritual path, and he's Jewish. And he said to me, well, you know, stories that I've read, this and that, and the experience that you had told me that there was, you know, a higher power and something that I wanted to pursue. Because what he said to me in the car actually was, I want that to happen to me too. And again, Bree looked back like, you know, I don't think you should be talking about this. This is a conversation for another time, she said. And, you know, Ryan's face was just lit up like he was like, tell me more. He was hungry for this. my goal in telling the story is for someone, anybody that might be dealing with some uncertainty, that might be thinking, life just has no meaning. It doesn't make sense. It's just screwed. Bad things keep happening. It just keeps going and going. Maybe this could go nowhere. I don't know. It's not my business. It's not my business. But telling the story is, because if the story can touch somebody, if it's you that needed to hear this and this touches you in some way, the mission has been completed. But I'll tell you right now, this power is available to us at any time. And I spent my life thinking that there were a certain way that you had to pray, a certain way you had to reach out to a higher power, you had to do certain things and be a certain way. You had to be perfect and pure as a driven snow and absolved of all your sins. And it's all bullshit. We're human. We're all human. We're all fallible. We're all out there tripping over each other, making mistakes, doing things that are, unsavory things and trying to do the best we can. And some are not trying to. But we're all just kind of getting through this. And it's like this is my belief, that God's just kind of going like, I'm here for you. I'm totally here for you. I'm never leaving you. I am never, ever leaving you. And that's the message. I'm 17 and some months sober, and that experience still affects me today a great deal. Was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer like 10 months ago, and I'm okay with it. People say, "Oh, he fought cancer," and then, I'm not fighting anything. I'm not fighting cancer. I'm not doing anything. I'm accepting life on life's terms, and I'm just like okay with where things are. Do I want this to be happening? No, I don't. But it's like, how much life could I miss out on if I sat here in misery? I'm just like in a place to where God's got my back. And it's what I got out of that experience. Many things I got out of that experience. And one of those things is that God never leaves us. He's never left me. He was with me during the most trying times of my life. And he's with me, Jackie, Ryan, my family now. And I know that to my core. And so I'm okay with it. So today I struggle with trying to protect them from their feelings, and I can't do that. But I can just be grateful for every day that I have here. And so I wake up in the morning and I thank God for every day. Thank God for the people in my life. I thank God for my sobriety. I thank God for, another day. Thank you for another day. And that's all we all really have. Like, who knows, I've had dear people just recently die of a heart attack at 53, didn't even have a chance to do the things that I've been able to do, which is spend time with people. That's the most meaningful quality time. Like the most meaningful quality time. And that could be having a bowl of ice cream with somebody and just looking at someone and realizing how much I love and care about them. And, I'm saying all this because this is the byproduct of that experience that I had. That life is bigger. It's way bigger than a disease or about, anything that comes up. It's way bigger than that. And, that was a gift that I was given that day, in room 34 or 36. It was one of those two, Pasadena Recovery Center, 17 plus years ago. It still affects me today. It affects me today in a major way. I'm so grateful for it. And that's it. That's the experience.
One month after recording this story, Gavin started home hospice care. 2 months later, he took his final breath. Documenting this story was important to Gavin. Originally, he shared this recording privately with loved ones during the final summer of his life. Gavin gave me permission to share his story publicly in an effort to reach anyone living in a tunnel of doubt and darkness. And I'm honored to do so this week, which is the 1-year anniversary of Gavin's death on August 29th. Revisiting this audio and video is a wonderful reminder of how important it is to document our milestone moments and our stories. On the day we recorded, Gavin was feeling relatively healthy. His voice sounds strong. And what a gift it is to be able to see him again, hear his laugh, and spend one more hour with him. If you know someone who may find Gavin's story comforting, send it to them. That's what he wanted. I'm really glad you stuck around. Thanks for listening to Coping Stories. And one last thing. If you're looking to hire someone to facilitate conversations about sensitive subject matter, or you need to hire a trauma interviewer, or you're interested in becoming my memoir client, or you want to share about a challenging chapter in your life and how you coped, either for this podcast or for my written mental health storytelling series, find me on Instagram @mentalhealthstoryteller, or my Substack, Brandy Menefee Mental Health Storyteller, or contact me through my website, prostorytellers.com. And of course, there's always LinkedIn.